If you've been watching these for a while, you're going to know the drill. Big, super big thank you to my Patreons. I've got workshops, courses, and so much more on there. And this most recent course actually had to do with my scariest experiences. So if you're interested in that, do check out my Patreon. Thanks for being here. People are being notified. I wonder if Emily's on yet. Oh my goodness, I'm already getting gifts. Hi, I just started this. Cool, I am waiting for Emily to get on. Good evening. What time is it there? I'm just letting Emily know I'm on. Hello. I'm seeing some of my mods come on. Hello, thank you. Thank you, mods, for being here. Thanks for being in our mods chat. Oh, there she is.
Oh my gosh, it worked first time. I don't know if that's ever happened.
Hey, here's to like new stuff, right? Also, I love you've got this blue thing going on. I've got the red thing going on. I'm like, this is yeah.
It's a balance. It's a balance.
Oh goodness. Well, hello. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I feel a little bit like I'm balancing a really, really full plate on the top of my head. But other than that, I think I'm solid. How are you doing?
I am well. I'm just gonna jump right into this. I had some consultations today, and some things actually happened around my apartment. And like as far as like people and interactions and that kind of thing. I've gotten a sense from the trends that a lot of people today, and I don't know if it's a week thing, but I certainly feel it today, feel they need to feel seen. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just wanted to say to anybody who's watching, take a moment and just think about who sees you, because they
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yep.
So
Yeah, they do. And I think that is actually a very big theme this week, and especially today. I've had very similar interactions, very similar understanding, I guess, of people coming into my space today, and even just with like my kids and stuff. I'm like, okay, that's what we're doing. Cool.
yeah.
So definitely let yourself be seen, I guess, or like accept that you are seen and there are people that do see you and care, because it is needed right now that we all think about that and acknowledge that and accept that.
Yeah. I think too, because you talk about journaling a lot as well.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that I did more subconsciously than consciously when I was growing up was I would like talk to myself and see myself because I was like, I don't think anybody gets me. So for anybody out there who might be like, hey, nobody gets me, you getting you is I think there are a lot of people who people supposedly get and they don't get themselves. So I think everybody individually getting themselves is going to be super important. So I hope for
Yeah.
everybody you can be kind to yourself today and tell yourself that you're valid and that you have purpose here. And I appreciate all of you
Yeah.
being here.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Also, I just want to say with the energy of this week, we are getting like our first breath in like the last 3 weeks. Like we are really getting our first like couple days stretch of like no major transits and the energy not being super duper intense and like on our case. Now, that being said, we're building up to a full moon next Monday, the first. What day is the first? That's Tuesday. On the first, and that's going to be a bit of a doozy. So we kind of have this stretch of energy of just like being for a second, which we haven't had in the last couple weeks. The last couple weeks have been super dynamic. They've been go, 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 go. They've been a lot of very quick decisions, a lot of really quick energy. And so in this space, when we have kind of a lull, oftentimes all the feelings that you didn't express come up. So that's the other piece of like holding a little bit of space for yourself today, tomorrow, etc. Yeah. Yeah, the full moon's next Tuesday, right? That's the first. Someone's
Yeah,
wondering
that's
about that.
now August 1st. We've
Yeah,
made it
August
this
1st.
far.
Yeah.
uh,
Yep, August 1st is the full moon.
I think too,
Oh.
because I know you mentioned like your head and your space. I
Mhm.
know there's some other people who are getting some kind of funny illnesses right now, which can sometimes be a
Mhm.
sign of And I won't speak for you, but generally speaking, it can sometimes be a sign of the thing that you held on to, you're now allowed to rest. And then your body's like, oh, great, we can rest now. Here's this thing I was holding on to. It's going to show up like in your nose in like 48 hours, but we're alive,
Hmm.
you know?
No, seriously, it has been a huge, like, honestly, for about a week and a half, I've been like, hey, body, we're okay, body. We're safe, body. Body, please don't get sick, body. Like, let me just drink a bunch of water. Like, everything's going to be fine. Because it is a time, and a lot of people relate to this too, where we're all pushing ourselves really intensely right now. And that's coming up in headlines where we're seeing people being pushed and being like, I'm done being pushed. That's coming up in personal life stuff where it's not all bad. It just means that we're also like, extreme. Oh, happy birthday. Someone said that their birthday's on the full moon. So happy birthday. But it also means that we're pushing ourselves kind of extremely. And that can be towards good stuff, but our body doesn't perceive the morality of like, oh, yay, excited for this, or that stuff's crappy. It's just like, wow, I'm tired regardless. So connecting with your body in that way, I think, is super important, especially right now.
I think this is something on Alchemist Inkwell, you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, like you and Crystalline mentioned, the body thinking very literally. And this is also something that shows up. I have an emotion coder on my readers team, and we have very interesting discussions on like how the body perceives things. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, your body's really literal. Like think Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy, like that. Like not dumb, just really literal. So you that can impact you in very interesting ways very quickly.
yeah. So everybody
Hmm.
take care of yourselves out there. We'll try to do the same.
Yeah. So on that note though, we wanted to like talk about some magic fun stuff. And I think it's a kind of good week to do that, to add some like levity. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily levity, but at least it's like some fun magical things to think about in the scheme of things. So my dog is like chilling right here.
So
Pushing like closer and closer, like needing attention. Need to call it out because, like, what are you doing?
very good. I thought about because I currently have my fish in a little cup. My fish is healing right now. I'm working with him to heal. He's got a bacterial something or another, and I thought about bringing him in the cup to be like he's here, but then I didn't. So there he is. But yeah, seeing your dog made me think of that, and I was like, oh, my fish is kind of that color too.
Yeah, yeah, he's a goober. He's been emotional all day as well, but that's fine.
I
He
would say
actually
so is
turned
my fish. Yeah,
7. His birthday was on Saturday, so he turned 7. He's not,
seven.
he's not big. He's my favorite child. I have 3 like actual children, but he's
Hey,
my favorite.
your kids will understand one day. Maybe they already do. And it's
Oh
like
no, I
it's
always tell them that, especially when they're in trouble. I'm like, this is why the dog is my favorite. They're like, yeah, he's my favorite too, mom. Like that doesn't stop anything.
I mean, that's a healthy relationship when everybody can just agree that the dog is the favorite. It
I
seems
mean,
fine.
yeah, it totally wins.
So,
So, mm-hmm.
yes, I wanted to get into the universe because
Get into the universe.
let's get into the universe. I'm already like, okay, hold down. Okay, got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love the video that you posted on your YouTube. Which, by the way, if anybody follows me on YouTube and you're not or follows me in general and you're not following Emily on YouTube, you're this way on my screen. But please,
Same,
um,
same.
yeah, uh, I loved the way you described the universe and like energy and like different tiers or frequencies or sentience levels as a cake. That
Mm-hmm.
was I was watching it and I was just like, yes, that's perfect. It's perfect. It's like a cake.
Yes, yes. The
Could you
universe is
kind of sum
like a
that up for
cake.
anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so I did a whole YouTube video on it because I genuinely can talk on this. This is like a TED Talk conversation for me, to be totally honest, because this is something I've channeled on so intentionally and so intensely for so long. Because basically, once I had my psychic reawakening, I was like, but how does anything work? Because that's how it feels, right? When you're going into your spiritual reawakening, you're like, okay, I kind of get myself now, but what about everything else? And that's when that comes in. And so, yeah. Um, in my perception, in my super abbreviated version of what I think the universe functions like based on my own channeling, what my guides have told me, and astral projection, is the universe is a layered cake. And the way the cakes work is they have tiers that go outward, right, for stability. Now, that is like kind of a cake of vibration. So the tippity tippity top is like creator energy, whatever you call that, creator, source, universe, all that is creator energy. And then as you go down the tiers, you get kind of lower vibration, which is not a good, bad thing. It's a density thing. So we're kind of in the middle, lower middle sort of zone because we're in a really dense space. We're in a really dense, very physical lifetime, meaning that our energy here is lower vibration and therefore has more density to it, where the higher we go up, the more information, first of all, we have, the more knowledge we have in those different tiers, and the more understanding and the less like amnesia, but also the less dense gravity-esque feels we get.
Mhm. One of my mods just said vibration cake, and I stand this.
Vibration code.
It's a vibration cake.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like with atoms and molecules, and I am not a scientist. So if any of you are science
Mm-hmm.
brained out there and you're like, ah, yes, that's explained correctly, but also not as correctly, I know. But I think of atoms, right? I think of molecules specifically with water.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm understanding correctly, anybody's welcome to correct me from my classes years ago. The concept of ice, right? It's molecules getting closer to each other. It doesn't mean that ice is bad. The concept of like fog or clouds, that means the molecules are farther apart. Once again,
Mm-hmm.
neither is bad nor good. It's just one is ice in maybe around the ground and one are clouds, and sometimes there's ice
Mm-hmm.
up there, and then there's like water and that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I look at it the same way when I'm kind of describing like vibrations or frequencies or weight. It doesn't mean that we are bad and this is a punishment. No, it means we are just different sets of molecules.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And what I do have to say too is you've probably had lifetimes or experiences on all different layers of the cake. So don't get hard on yourself. Be like, why are we in the low? We're not in the lowest vibration, first of all. We are not in the densest, iciest part there, which I love your analogy there. I think that's perfect and awesome because we're not. We are up a little bit. And the thing is this place is rising in energy. So we may end up moving up some kind of layer of the cake gradually over the next 1,000 years or whatever anyway, which we're already starting to kind of feel in what I've talked about and I know you've talked about on your channel a lot. That kind of energy. Um, what I will also say is it is a lot easier for us to tap in up because the energy is easier to access up and from stuff up to come down to us because they're sitting in that easier energy than it is to go down lower and lower and lower and lower because again more and more density there. So sometimes we have stuff that does access from like the lower tiers as well, which has come up multiple times, but that's also why when we do astral or when we channel our guides, those kinds of things, we're connecting to energy that's existing in other parts of the cake above us. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense to me, but I also watched your entire video and have also had many
Yeah.
questions on this that I have asked the universe. So,
I know. I'm always like, okay, let me get like super duper duper woo woo for a second and like go there. And then we can talk about like if we flip the cake forward facing so it becomes circles, then there's Venn diagrams to the circles as well. So like we can even expand in that. And that's when you get like sideways realms, etc. But those are their own cakes overlapping with our cakes. So if you think like the fairy realm, it's like over there. Or the dragon realm, it's like over there. But it's in its own layered cake that kind of overlaps in more of a pyramid space as well. Yeah.
and the cake resonated with me because it's just easy to understand. I had
Mm-hmm.
always seen it as a kind of like Venn diagram kind of circle thing where there are circles
Mm-hmm.
that are doing all kinds of stuff. It's actually been something recent. I started doing a new reading. I told you about it briefly. Of
Yeah.
it's like I'm calling it a soul journey where I work with a person's guide. So it's like part guide reading if they need that, but it's also I read between 3 and 10 lives, all with the
Mm-hmm.
purpose of like understanding what the soul is doing over time. And sometimes
Yeah.
with that, like what will come up is where somebody is from, like where their soul finds
Mm-hmm.
an acknowledgement of origin or something like that. Most recently, I explained it to somebody. This was actually one of my Patreon workshops where like there's these layers, and then there's these layers, and then there's these layers, and I was like, and you're a little bit off to the side on like the four-dimensional thing. Like it's right above ours, but it's below some of this stuff, and like it's similar but different, and like this is what folks look like over there. And like I loved it too because they had already been doing different readings on it too, and they were just like, "Yep, that makes sense." And I was like, "Cool, great, thanks."
Right? First of all, I love that you're doing like soul origin reading stuff because I am also super passionate about it and it's super fun to look at soul pattern stuff and past life stuff in that kind of lens. It's cool. And I appreciate that you're doing that. And yeah, it gets weird. There's no rules. So like I'm describing it as a cake because in my human brain and body, things need to be organized in a way that's fathomable because that is what the human condition is our need to have things be in an organized structure that we can understand. The cake is that close thing that we can do, but the way you described it with like sideways pieces and there's this and then you can be, yes, yeah, there's no rules about anything, which is also something that keeps being a theme over and over and over again, whether it's in like readings that I'm doing or consultations that I'm doing or talking to different guides or deities out there. It's been a huge theme of like if humans could just stop listening to the rules they gave themselves, things would be so much better.
Yeah, I could go into a lot on that, and I'm just gonna not. But
Yeah,
yes, uh,
right?
goodness, and something else to keep in mind, and I had this metaphor pop into my brain. It's important. Here's the thing. You and I, we've been doing this for a while. Like, we're very curious. We've got good relationships with our guides, and we ask a
Mhm.
lot of folks a lot of different things. Um, we get into the nitty gritty because we're at a place where we're just like, yeah, what's out there? And of course, I
Mhm.
encourage this to anybody who's interested in that. But if there's anybody out there who's also like, whoa, this is overwhelming, think of it this way: the night sky, it's there. There are stars. They have, planets around them. They've got all the stuff around them. It's okay to accept the universe is there and stuff is going on without having to be like, oh man, I've got to get my telescope and I've got to zone in and I've got to like channel that planet. If you want to do that, if that's what you feel you need to do, great. But otherwise, I'm also like, for anybody that's like, too much,
Right.
it's okay.
You don't have to. Yeah, don't freak out about it. This is just our area of interest because I'm a hyper fixated person on things and I needed to understand more. You do not have to in order to be part of the operating universe and even open your psychic or spiritual abilities or connect more with your guide. Like you definitely don't have to. And I think that's a perfect analogy of the night sky. I also think since it is the theme of the day, you want to talk about aliens a little bit?
Oh, okay, okay. I want to hold that because there's this one question that
Okay.
I want to get to that somebody asked that I
Yes,
think
do
is
it, do
really
it, do it.
good. But we will remember the aliens because I'm sure a bunch of people in my chat are going to be like, alien. So,
I
yes.
know. Yep.
Um, so somebody just gave me a universe gift. I don't even know what it's called. The galaxy. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, right. It was just like a galaxy there. Thanks, Blizzard
Aliens.
Pearl. Aliens. Um, so somebody asked about the underworld, in regards to like frequencies, and if we're here, does that mean that the underworld is some kind of heavier frequency? For me
Mm.
personally, to answer that question, I think it is in regards to what underworld you're talking about and if they process human souls and how they process them. Um, because I've done a lot of work in the underworld. That's kind of my go-to astral place. Um,
Mhm.
None of you should be surprised if you've been following me. Let's be real. But
Mhm.
all the same, maybe that's because of where my soul like works and origins and like all that stuff. But like for me, it feels very comfortable and homey because I'm used to it. But I'm curious what you would have to say on that because it doesn't feel as
No,
heavy
I
to me,
think
but
I fully agree. I fully agree for sure. Exactly with what you're saying of like it depends on what underworld you're actually talking about because there are plethora. I will say for the most part, I think it's another element of our current layer of the cake. Kind of.
it's close.
Um
Like I work with
it's
Hellenistic underworld most of the time, and it's
and that is if anything it might actually be above our layer of the cake. It's a higher vibe place, but we visualize it as a underneath us space. Um there's more magic the more up the cake you go. is kind of the way that I can say it. And the underworld tends to be a pretty magical space. It's just not fairies and glitter. It's a different type of magic and energy there. So in my opinion, I agree with you, it is a place of like, I also find it kind of homey, and I don't think I'm a really good source on that one. But I do think it's either in our part of the cake, depending upon what you're looking at, or a step or two above, depending again what underworld you're working with.
Yeah. Cool.
Underworld above us.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, it's kind of like whenever we look at a map, right? Like the map always has like North America above South America, but we are a sphere in the universe and there is no up or down.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, just good question for whoever asked that. Great question. The answer is just complicated.
Yeah. And I'd say
Hmm.
too, like if anybody's like looking into astral or like has been to places and that thing before, if you ever come back with sludge, uh check yourself, make sure you're leaving whatever's not yours there. That may be a matter of shielding before you go.
Hmm.
Or if you just go to some place and it feels like the gravity's heavier and it's uncomfortable to you.
Hmm. Yeah, astral is not some place to mess around with. Astral is like that's a like a you want to make sure you're really prepared and you train for and you know what spiritual energy stuff to do. Some people do astral accidentally and that's totally fine. We're not saying like, oh no, but you do want to like if that happens then circle back around and be like, oh, what did I miss? What do I need to make sure that I'm clearing and doing? Actually, I've gotten a lot of questions about astral projection lately, and I do think it's part of that, again, kind of raising consciousness connection, like everyone is feeling the more active spiritual energy around us, of which it is right now very intensely. And one of the fun ways is astral, but it's not always fun. So when it comes to astral projection, I'll just have to do a whole YouTube video on it, to be totally honest.
And there's already that episode on your podcast as well,
Yeah.
which I found very interesting as well. And I think the way that you go about it is approachable but safe. Another thing I wanted to mention too, because somebody asked about the sludge, it's important to make a distinction between any sludge you might get, sludge, or parts of you that you might be leaving behind. Like, let's say you don't take care of your physical body before you do that and you feel very tired afterwards. One, you want to be sure that you're taking care of your physical body first, but also
Hmm.
you want to be sure that you're not leaving parts of yourself. And I don't mean like whole parts, like, I just mean for any healer, whether you're doing it in this body or another, or any action that you put out, you want to be sure that you're pulling that energy up from somewhere rather than just being like, cool, you can have my arm, cool, you can have my leg, like
Yeah.
metaphorically.
Yeah. What I will say, I tend to describe it as like a soul fragmenting. So you have a bunch of soul energy, and when you're like leaving a piece of you behind, it's like taking a little chunk of that soul energy and like pushing it into the ground in a certain place. You might not have intended to do that, but you will probably feel its lack of presence because you'll be like, whoa, I come back and I'm not feeling super grounded. I need new energy, etc. You can call your pieces back. That's totally fine. It's not like a permanent sacrifice or anything like that. But if you're doing that really subconsciously for a very long time, you're going to find yourself very depleted and not understanding why in a hurry. So just an astral does that. So
So
there's that.
everybody
There's
go
that.
follow your YouTube
Mhm.
and listen to the episode on astral projection on your podcast.
Uh, right. My podcast is called The Alchemist Inkwell for I think someone asked in here. So The Alchemist Inkwell is what it's called. Time doesn't exist, period. Someone asked if time exists in astral. Time is made up. Time is a pretend construct of it doesn't exist. So that is a whole other live that we could talk about because that is so much deeper than I think we need to go right here. But time doesn't exist at all. It's all pretend.
It's the game
That
of
being said,
life.
you can manifest more time or less time if you need to. So, for example, if you have something really exciting coming up, you can oftentimes bend time and manifest, okay, I want this to happen a lot sooner. And other times you can also be like, okay, I need more time. All of a sudden, time starts dragging and being longer, and you can actually play with it more than so. That's like the base. That's time basics.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the first thing bit of understanding time is start playing with it and see if you can manipulate it to your benefit because you can because it's pretend.
I love this. Yes. Woo. Okay, I promise we go back to the aliens though.
Let's talk about aliens, though. Okay. Um, what I will say is I do think that in within our layer of the cake, there is aliens, like other life on other planets that are in our same vibrational density. They might be further ahead of us as far as their technological advancements, and I think those are probably the ones that we've been interacting with on planet here. However, the same way I talked about earlier with like the next door cakes to ours, with like the fairy realms, the dragon realms, etc. I think also up the layers of the cake, we'll get extra dimensional or extraterrestrial communication that way. And I know personally I've astral to other planets and have talked to higher up the layer of the cake beings, not beings on our level of the cake. That's my 2 cents. Yeah, they're very real. Um,
Oh,
that it's not a matter of the government confirming it for me, at least. I'm like, yeah, da-da. Um, but however you feel, what do you feel about the whole alien thing?
okay, so something about you saying that literally just connected the dots on who in the world I was talking to in a consult the other day. Like,
Oh, no. Okay.
so, long story short, and of course, without revealing any details, it was a being that had inserted themselves as like a very specific, actually, I don't really know how specific, but they had inserted themselves into pop culture as this one kind of Fey Lord that I had not heard of before, but has been talked about. So please, nobody ask me, and then different people connect with
Mhm.
different things. So I don't want everybody to think, oh man, I'm saying this. But anyway, they had put on some kind of mask as this being, and then when I connected to them, I was like, why in the world am I in space? I feel like I'm on a small ship. Like, what in the world? Like, I was seeing, like, I felt like I was in some kind of space movie for a minute, and it's just some dude on a throne and stuff, and I was just like, who the F am I talking to? they they were something, one, they were projecting a kind of thing that they didn't want me to see all of their features, which I'm like, okay. um but it was interesting. They were what I would consider this kind of alien, if but like on a different kind of plane, so almost like an alien spirit, but like on that plane they're absolutely a spirit. I feel like I'm the
Mhm.
aliens guy right now, being like so, aliens. But yeah, just what you said just totally made sense, because I was like, that's not an alien that I'm familiar with on this physical plane. But now I'm looking
No.
at like that was some other alien who wanted to get more presence here.
Yeah, and like we're alien to them too, which I always think is important to note. Like we're the same. Like this is like they think we're weird looking or whatever too. So like there's that element too. But yeah, from what you're saying, it feels like that was a couple layers up the cake. You went up the cake to talk to that particular being. Um, which is not usually how I do want to say, in millions of ways pop culture has done us dirty. Um, Aliens is another one. And there's been good things that come out of pop culture too. Like I'm not trying to say that all of it is wrong. And again, if anyone has ever talked to me or heard me speak about fiction books, like everything exists in energetic reality somewhere. So I'm not saying like little green men with big eyes don't exist, but what I am saying is our understanding of the interactions and also communication style of extra dimensional beings, which is usually what I call it because that kind of encompasses all the layers of the cake with the aliens that don't focus on this planet, I guess is the best way I'm going to describe it. So extra dimensional beings, the communication is very different. If you ever do astral anything, you'll notice that the communication isn't with their mouths. Most of the time, channeling, no matter what type of clair you use, you're not watching them talk. You're getting the feelings or images or whatever kind of sent to you, and that is a lot more common in different areas, etc., of the universe. We are in one of the spaces of like we need to say it, and we're probably will reach a point in our evolution where that's not the case, but we are still sitting in that space now. Um, so it is more vibrational speak, and again, more up or more down. I do want to say very clearly that you also really want to watch, especially for the New Age spiritual community, pay a lot of attention to very coded, racially motivated narratives, because a lot of the alien stuff has become incredibly bigoted and incredibly racist. Things like starseeds, even like Drakens, I think is what it is. It's like a dragon race thing. A lot of the like lizard people stuff, all of that is just like really anti-Semitic and really, really racially, like people use it in a really, really negative way. So if we're going to talk about aliens, I do just want to talk about that too, because a lot of the stuff out there will be presented as kind of like new age information. And if you dig into it, it's actually just a way to hate. And that is not what we are talking about here
Yes.
at all. So I
And
do just
thank
want
you
to like
for
highlight
making, yeah,
that.
thank you for
Hmm.
making that distinction because um, in my humble experience, we are all folks from everywhere. And that's the
Hmm.
super cool thing about us being able to exist with each other here.
Hmm.
And that's not tied to a particular race or gender or look or anything like that. We're all here just trying to do the best that we can, and we're all from special places. And that's not to say nobody's special because everybody's special. No, we are all really special, and that's super cool that we get to exist with one another.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's from everywhere, and you have had multiple lives on all the tiers of the cakes in all sorts of different places for the most part. And yeah, so there's that sort of space too. I agree.
Slash, you also just validated this being that I talked to. I had to call like a higher power because I was like, like it's like guide me.
That's amazing.
So you talked about the higher on the cake, and I was just like, yeah, I
Yep.
had to go higher on the cake for that.
Hmm. Well, it's really helpful once you have that kind of visualization, and like certain different like healing modalities, like theta healing talks about it as like the planes of existence, but they only have seven. That there's not only seven, so like it's helpful to have like something that you go up and you feel yourself going up to talk to things. It's very interesting. So if that helps anyone. Someone did ask, and I think this is a fun question if you want to talk about it as well. What was it like to meet your spirit guides for the first time? Um, first off, first off, first off on that question, um, you don't meet all of them at the same time. Most of the time you meet them very gradually, and that is dependent on a whole bunch of different factors. Some of it is because that is the guide you're supposed to meet at this point in time. Some of it's because you don't have that guide working with you until you turn 50, and all of a sudden, ta-da, there's that guide there. And sometimes it's because, well, you're kind of thrust into it and now there's two different beings there that are there helping you. There's a million different kind of facets to that. I did do a deep dive video. It's posting tomorrow on my YouTube about how I met some of my guides for the first time. But how the experience was uncomfortable is how I'm going to use that term. I don't think a single meeting of guides has been comfortable ever. It's been exciting. It's cool. It's something I absolutely encourage, and my guides are my best friends in the whole wide world, but it's not been cozy. What's your thoughts?
So I kind of have to look at it in a few different chunks of who I was aware of at the time. When I was growing up, my guide, I didn't really know who I was talking to. I just knew she was an old lady and she wasn't my family. And like she would tell me good things to do and other things like calm down and like it was good, but like I never talked about her because nobody was talking about voices that were seemingly inside of their heads and I didn't
Mhm.
know what she was at the time, but I knew she was good. Um so there was that. I Another spirit guide, she was cool. I worked with her up until
She was cool.
she was cool. Like she came on the scene. She was like this really pro woman like ruler from I think the late 1500s that like I had lived with her in that life, and she and
Hmm.
I would like go on these long walks and I'd just be like, how do you know me? And she would just be like, well, let me tell you, you did some silly things the last time I knew you. And I was like, yes, lay me out, cool. So yeah, I'd say the a trippier experience was when I was first talking to Turnip because, and this is the way I describe this, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on my pie because I've got my pie ready to go. This is how
Hmm.
my visual aid. Um, got it. So in the concept that souls can split, and that's how some people will be incarnated at the same time, have parallel
Hmm.
lives, that kind of thing. Souls can also be split in different places.
Yeah.
So I met a piece of my soul who was primarily working in a few different underworlds. And when I first started talking to her, it was really, really trippy because I was doing like automatic writing because I kept hearing a voice in my head that was like
Hmm.
kind of mean, but sassy, but smart. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to write this out. And at
Hmm.
first, the voice was totally mine, which I was like, cool. Yeah, I know this has happened before where the voice in my head is mine, but it's not me. But this is weird because it's like coming from closer inside of me rather
Yeah.
than like behind me. Um, so yeah, that was really trippy. And then I just kind of kept writing for an entire summer because I was like, who are you? Like, why? So
Hmm.
yeah, that was that experience. It was trippy.
So
She was,
uncomfortable.
yeah, it was uncomfortable. I was just like, I don't know what. Um, so yeah, she's one of the ones who works with me now. Yeah, I wanted to ask you one in part, like how often, because I'll go ahead and preface this, it's not so often with me that I meet somebody's guide that's also some piece of them from somewhere. Like, do you run into that very often?
On occasion. So spirit guides are kind of like my specialty, I guess, is the way that I would present that. If I had to like narrow it down, my specialties are probably spirit guides, block removal, and then like soul journey work, kind of similar to you, past life stuff. I guess those would be kind of my like specialties that I would do readings for. And then how the universe works is my own hyperfixation personal project. There's that. And then of course the channel, channel history, that sort of, again, that's sort of the soul journeys piece. Like I'm lumping that kind of into the anyway. So if I'm doing readings like that, um, I have found it on occasion. I will say for that to be like it's more easily identified as like a higher self coming in and helping out a lot of the time. I will occasionally see like, oh yeah, you definitely have a piece of your soul that's like incarnated in your circle and you guys are helping each other out in like a physical reality thing. It is more rare when it is a guide, like a straight up guide being still a piece of your soul helping you out. Yeah. I also do just want to say on that note that twin flames are not another part of your soul.
Mm-mm.
I'm just gonna like throw that in there because again, I guess I'm just like ranting against the new age belief systems in this live, but like those are not the thing. That's not a thing. Like I'm not saying twin flames aren't a thing, but like it being another part of your soul that's supposed to like rip you apart and stuff, like all of that is a no for me. So
Thank you for that as well.
yeah.
I think that's why it was even trippier because I had already been doing consultations for years at that point, and I was just
Hmm.
like, wait, I've seen this happen like maybe 3 times in years. And I was just like, I didn't understand. The thing is, though, because somebody asked me once, they were like, isn't it bad for you to guide yourself? And I was like, dude, Turnip is her own.
Being. Yeah. Yeah.
like, uh, like her personality is different, her experiences are different. Like, yes, she can like read into my experiences and that kind of thing. Our morals are different. Like, she works with me to understand how I can do things like manipulate time, like stuff like that, because she's kind of like, that's not real. It's not real
Hmm.
because, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm for learning, like meeting new folks in time. I feel like they're going to come
Hmm.
into my life a little bit more that are not me. And for most of my life, it has not been pieces of my
Hmm.
pie because she was the fuller part of the pie.
Yeah.
Then
She
they're
had
like,
more soul energy than you. Like same soul, but more soul energy. So
yeah,
like you
yeah,
came with like this much soul and she came with like this much soul. And like so
yeah,
therefore she is in a different part of her journey, but still part of your pie. I get it.
right.
You're good. It's a good pie.
We're all on the pie, on the cake
Yeah.
in
On that
reverse,
note, a couple
floating.
people asked, like, well, then what is a twin flame then? And I do just want to say, I have a whole episode on it on my podcast, which we really get into it, Krista and I. The twin flame is a counterpart. So it's an entirely different soul that often has been part of your different journeys in some capacity or another. But that is usually all the things that you're not, they are. So there's a balance there. You're not guaranteed to incarnate with a twin flame. Most people don't. It's rare, and even then, if it does come in, it is not supposed to be this huge, like, lightning strike combustion moment that then creates a bunch of trauma. That's not the twin flame. If anything, they come in and they will fill out the pieces of you that you are not, if that makes sense. It's not even like the same person in a different body or anything like that. They're their own being. They're just a lovely reflection of all the things that maybe you lack or that you're not as good at or they're at and whatever. And it's like a very piece of a puzzle situation. Again, this is it's a huge in-depth thing, but that's the best way I can describe it at least. Have you felt the same?
Yeah, really, I've been more hurt by the concept of twin flames than I have been helped by it
Yeah,
because
for sure.
that I remember there was somebody I ran into in college that I was like, oh, that's what I found my twin flame. And that was a very not good time.
Yeah, someone just said if you feel anxiety, it's a no. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not something to cause more anxiety. If anything, it's like a simplicity feeling where all of a sudden someone picks up your gaps and you pick up their gaps and it's an equal thing. And again, most of the time you don't have one incarnated here with you. Most of the time.
It shouldn't be used to justify bad treatment.
No. Divine counterpart, exactly. Not a not the new age definition of that again is just a definition of an abusive relationship. So like don't. Again, this is something incredibly detailed I have also channeled on because I've also been hurt by the new age concept of it and was like, that can't be right and figured it out. So, hmm yep, yep. hmm I will also say though, once you get to know your guides, even though it's uncomfortable meeting them a lot of the time or getting to know them, it's wonderful to know them. So don't stop.
Yeah, get
Like, do
curious
not.
for sure. Like
hmm
you have an agreement with them to do something, so get curious.
hmm
When I talk to people about like either channel writing or doing different exercises, using their different clair abilities, I always tell them start with silly things. Be like,
hmm
hey, have you had a tuna sandwich before? Did you like it?
Uh-huh.
Like that usually
Exactly
elicits an
that. Or
emotion.
even being like, what should I wear today? Do you have a thought? Like things that don't matter, your human brain is going to be so much more likely to let you perceive information from because it doesn't feel like life or death. It doesn't feel like, uh-oh, bad thing because it's new. It's going to be like, oh, whatever. We have to figure out what we're going to wear anyway. Like it's so much more chill.
Mhm.
hmm
I wanted to ask you a question. With spirit guides, because I've also
hmm
found the more that I do deep dives, the more specific I get with like, what kind of spirit guide? Some people have, on a recent video, I've described Rupert as a kind of guardian, where it's
hmm
like I see him as a kind of extension of guides, but not necessarily like on the guide level. And he's worked very hard for that. Like he's been working with his higher self and that kind of thing. He's not the ghost I met who was a shred of himself years ago.
Rupert. I'm so happy for him.
He works very hard.
I I know he does, and I'm so happy for him.
Though I also think of like past loved ones, for example, where past loved ones I have seen can be guides, though there's, from what's been explained to me, a kind of process where they have to deal with the stuff that they had while they were alive, their own dreams, ambitions, grieves,
hmm
shames. And once they do that, then they can be a guide because that allows them to take off the kind, blinders is a bit extreme, but it allows them to kind of be like, oh, I remember I wanted so and so to go to college, but now I see, now that I've removed that need from myself, now I see that they were meant to go to trade school and I can support them in that.
hmm it's a detachment
Mm-hmm.
situation. And that, yeah, like I have come into where past loved ones are guides, and that is usually something you agreed on way before you entered on planet anyway. Of like, cool, this is what you're gonna do, this is what I'm gonna do. You can be my guide, whatever. But that is a little bit more rare because it's hard for us to completely unattach from the narrative we had on in life plane to be an effective guide. Where guides are usually they come in and they have your best interest at heart, of course, because you've agreed that they would, but they're not going to do it with any self motivation. They're doing it with your motivation, and if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction to make. And this is
Mhm.
why I do get kind of specific, especially in readings, because we can get spiritual guidance
Mhm.
from anybody in spirit, whether that be ghosts,
Mhm.
past loved ones, deities,
Absolutely.
guides. Though there's an important distinction to be made on which of those folks are working with us to specifically be a guide. And that's the
Mhm.
distinction that I made, just because I I do see a lot of people kind of putting an umbrella term over all that. And they're like, oh, well, grandma says. And I'm like, is grandma a guide?
Do you want her to guide you? Like that's the other thing too. Like spirit guides have like literal contracts with you to be a guide to help you with X, Y, and Z thing. If you want guidance from your grandmother and her opinion, by all means, go for it. But then that's also important. Like, oftentimes, what we will do is, we glorify people once they've passed, which is like, I'm not trying to say that people are bad people, but I am saying when someone's passed, we think about them in a very different light than we did when they were on planet. But they are still them. And so they will still give you the advice.
Oh no, it's just you and me, everybody. That was funny. I was just kicked off.
Bye. Hi.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
fun. Okay.
Yeah. Someone just asked, is it okay to use tools like tarot to listen or tap into your guides, or is it possible to just hear them? Yes to both. I do just want to say tarot, pendulums, runes, casting stones, anything like that. Those are not training wheels. You're not trying to get out of using them. They are tools to help you access your abilities. Period. You can also just hear them. So it's a both. It's a both and.
Yeah, I encourage people sometimes to try using your psychic senses first and then use the tools to validate what you just got.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Do that all the time for sure. Yeah, I think it is something that people will oftentimes be like, well, I started with cards and then I progressed. I'm like, cool, your intuition's grown. That's amazing. I still go back to my cards all the time though, because I want the additional validation of my intuition. Or sometimes my guides will be like, I'm not gonna tell you unless you get out your cards. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Okay, I will get them out then. Which deck do you want? Or occasionally I do a type of reading, which I only do for myself for the most part, which I do with chess pieces. And I will do that for myself sometimes. And I'm like, fine, what do you want? Like those are pieces. And that will just be them because they wanted me to do X, Y, and Z things. So tools are beautiful. Hmm.
I started to use quarters as a part of my set because I've got a bunch of like stones, bottles of water. Just it's a kind of apparently it's a kind of lithomancy. I recently learned what they
Oh,
was.
cool.
Yeah, I was just doing this intuitively because I never really connected with cards, and I was like, well, I like rocks, so I'll just I use clairsentience, and I use my hand like a claw machine, and I'm just like, all right, who am I talking to, or what's the answer, or something like that.
Hmm.
Patreons now get this once a month. I do like a 4 to 5 part reading as a kind of outlook.
Hmm.
But yeah, I one thing I mentioned coins because everybody's got coins. Like you could use that as
Hmm.
divination, be like put them in a
Absolutely.
bag or something, be like, all right, I want some kind of answer on something. I typically use quarters because they have different backs.
Yeah,
So
that's a great idea. Coins. I have people do nature walks and find their set that they're going to use that day to get information. And and the reason I say use it just for that day, you can keep it as part of a larger set you use more often. But if you go out on a nature walk and you're looking for multiple pieces of stuff and then you come back, you're going to remember the context in which you found that particular item. You're going to remember more about it. And then you can do a pull for yourself that way too. That's great though. I love the idea of quarters. That's a good idea. Very, very
thanks.
good
I'd
idea.
love to
Yeah.
say that it was my own, but it was probably Hermes. So um
That tracks. It's okay. It's totally fair. I also encourage people to make their own deck of cards using characters that you relate to, or places in fiction you relate to. You can either just write their name on a back of a note card or whatever, or you can print out pictures and put them whatever. But that is a really easy way to make an intuitive deck for yourself is through characters you relate to.
Mhm. I love that.
That would be my recommendation as well.
Uh, saw some good questions, some of which people are asking about a bit more on types of spirits. I'm gonna plug my Patreon a little bit there too. I
Mhm.
did an hour long video on different types of spirits, mainly the ones that hang out around this vibration, or not vibration, but this plane. So I'm not
Mhm.
so much getting into the big parts of the cake on that one. But types of ghosts, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm like, let's talk ghost.
Mhm.
So also somebody else asked, do you ever encounter evil or bad spirits? I have encountered many spirits that have different moralities than me,
Mhm.
which we might consider as bad. That's another course that I just posted on Patreon as well, where I talked about my most terrifying experiences over my life and what I learned from them and what I wish I could have learned at the time and didn't. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I put that behind the paywall of Patreon just because I do get pretty personal and I don't want that out
Mhm.
there for everybody. So anybody who wants that of interest starts at $10 a month for the course and they're already 8 up. So, well, anyway.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely go check out Rebekah's Patreon and anything Rebekah does.
And
Rebekah is
yours.
awesome. Yeah, I definitely have also encountered spirits of different morality, which I think is a really good way of phrasing that, because that is more how they should show up. There's been like, oh no, you are just straight up not. You're intentionally harmful on purpose. There has been some, and so I don't want to say there's not evil things that exist out there, but they are the exception, not the rule.
Mhm.
And so I will throw that out there too.
Totally.
On that note too, I also have a Patreon. We have a bunch of fun stuff. We do card readings once a month. I'll put that on there. I also have a call with me once a month here with like a bonus group. I mean, there's a ton of stuff and I'm constantly expanding it. So yeah, just starting getting that going. Rebekah's been doing hers forever and I'm just getting mine going. So, but there is
Indeed.
a good amount of like monthly meditation and stuff in there and activation and all sorts of fun stuff. So,
Yeah. I think of what you're doing on your Patreon. I know you do some of those things in like your other courses and that kind of thing, though from looking at it, it's a chance for people to like actually talk with you a bit more, if nothing
mhm.
else from like the comment section and that kind of thing. So it's stuff that you've been doing, but the added element of like
Consistent
just
communication with me on a thing. And I
yeah.
tend to let my patrons know if like something weird is coming up spiritually or whatever. I'm like, hey, stuff is going on. Because that's not always something I want to put out on social fully to everybody and that kind of thing too. So,
Yep, that's why I didn't do the video about scariest encounters on the public because I was like, people need to see that it's not just about scary things. It just so happens when I
yeah.
didn't
And
understand my abilities, that's what
it's a
happened.
nuanced conversation too. Like you have to understand who we are or who you are as a person to understand the way that you perceived this stuff. And that is more patron stuff. But yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, more often, the things that we show up and we're initially scared of are not evil. I'm not saying that they aren't out there, but
Mhm.
we're just scared of them as we're going through our.
I would say too, I
Mhm.
feel like you and I both have had to learn how to ask for help. Like we know how to stand on our own, but like there's so much to be said about when, and I'll speak from first person on this, when I had to feel like I was alone, when I felt like I didn't have anybody that I could call out for, whether that be physical or spirit. And then to finally break that and be like, I have folks who actually care, whether they're
Mhm.
in front of my face or in my perception. So that's what, for me, has let me overcome the fear because now if something scary happens, which yeah, I was literally staying with a friend recently and something walked into the room at 2 a.m. and I had a moment where I was like, there's a man in my room. And then there was another moment where I was like, I I can just push him out.
Mhm. Well, that's it. People oftentimes I'll be like, like they're like, I'm scared to see things, whatever. I'm like, actually, like 6-year-old you is scared to see things. 30-year-old you is not actually scared to see things. You're just operating off of outdated information. That 6-year-old you was freaking terrified, reasonably, because you were 6. But now, if a ghost were to walk into your house, you'd be like, get out. What are you doing in here? Like, you cannot come in. And that's a very different energetic dynamic to have. So I will say, if you are scared of seeing things, if you're holding that limiting belief or block it, but you do want to, if you're like, oh, I do want to tap into things, and it doesn't just mean seeing I'm just saying using seeing as a general term. Ask yourself, are you now currently present day scared of that? Because you have a lot more tools now present day than you did the first time you maybe saw or encountered something, which was a long, long time ago, and probably scared you, but scared that version of you, not this one, which is two different versions.
Yep. One of the things that led me to blocking my physical clairvoyance as a kid was this situation. And I talked about it. I'm not trying to like actively be like everybody my Patreon, but like I do talk about it on that course. And part of the way that I fix my life, was I realized what I needed at the time, which was just I needed the door to be shut because there were these folks that were like walking up down the hallway and they're freaking me out because I didn't know what they were and I was like 3 or 4. So me, I like time traveled. I went to a place in my mind. I saw it happening. I saw the figures in my hallway and I was kind of like, oh, that's what they are. Okay, okay, okay. And then I looked at terrified me and I was like, I'm going to shut the door. And so I, in my mind, shut the door and I just went and sat with little child me. And I was just like, do you want to talk about it? Or did you just need the door shut? So
You just need the door shut. Like, you just need this like one level of something to help. And I will say, someone asked, like, well, does that mean our inner child has its own consciousness? And the way I like to think about it is we are layers. So every time we do a big shift, whether that is your inner child or even you leave a job or you move to a different house, I don't want to think of it as like a fracture, but a layer to your shadow grows. And so it's not a full consciousness separate than yours, but it is the way that your shadow is connected to you, but is not you at the same time. That is one of those aspects. So you can integrate those aspects back in. You can pull those things back in. So when we talk about shadow work, that's more what we're talking about, is you're talking to the imprint of consciousness left on that particular layer of the shadow and helping fix whatever rift happened to meld that back in. Yeah. So it's like an element of you that does have a conscious imprint, but is not a full consciousness that's making all of your decisions.
open the can of worms. I'll just say this. Elements of ourselves I have run into on a ghostly form. As in, like, I have a friend, paranormal investigator, who left their childhood home, and then the people who moved in said they saw her as a child there in the home. And that's where I started, like, that was part of, I called it like a theory of shreds. You know, like if you were to take pieces of yourself that perhaps the part of you now or then didn't feel like it was useful or whatever, you kind of leave it behind. And that's how you sometimes get spiritual activity of people who are maybe still around in some capacity.
And it can still be healed. You can pull that piece in.
Yes.
But you did just leave it over. You left them over
there. And to tie it in, mental health is a great way to heal these things. If you want to tie in spiritual health, certainly. There was this one question that was really great. Yes. In one of my recent videos, a spirit at the Bergman Wright house who was just visiting, it was actually somebody's guide. I never run into somebody who was like, yeah, I'm so-and-so's so-and-so. And I was just like, you're at a market with a bunch of ghosts. And she was like, yeah, I used to be here, but now I'm this ancestral guy. I was like, what? But anyway, she mentioned that Rupert was looking much healthier since the last time that she had seen him. And somebody asked in my comments, they're like, how does a spirit look healthier? And I believe it comes down to mental health. It comes down to how one views themselves. And I say that whether your spirit is there or in your body, how you view yourself matters. And we can call that spiritual health, but I do think that is a line of mental health. When you feel better about yourself, people know this. And it's the same thing in spirit. It's like how the amount of times I've talked to past loved ones, they don't show up on their hospital bed. Sometimes they show up like younger and like, oh, hi. It's like, no, grandma. Like, oh.
Hmm. Usually they show up not looking like it. Occasionally I've had them show up looking like they did on their hospital bed, but moving like they were a young person. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? And they're like, oh, I earned this. I want to look like this. I earned it. And it's like, you do you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I will say it does make a lot of sense. And it similarly to like how you are with Rupert, like Lacusta looks much different now than she did when I first started channeling her in.
Mhm.
Um, just the more mental health, I think, is a huge part of that.
Mhm.
Huge part of that.
Reminded me. Now I'm totally going to be watching what you released on YouTube about this. So if it's
Hmm.
getting too far into that, and we have to leave in a cliffhanger. I will wait.
Hmm.
I'm curious though, because I think it was in one of your recent videos you referred to Acosta as. Did I say her
A
name
guide.
correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you go into that like
Yeah,
journey, how that
I'll
actually turned
totally.
into?
I will totally touch on that. It is in the video I'm releasing tomorrow
Okay.
on YouTube. So if you do want to go more deeper in that, by all means. Basically, the way it happened is kind of a similar capacity of like ghost friends, I guess, but she's not on our plane, right? So I didn't meet her in like a ghost form. I met her like I channeled her in because she decided to give me this story, whatever. But I've been working with her. I had channeled this story in 6 years ago. I've been writing it for the last two significantly. It's done. I just need to edit it and do some stuff with it before anyone can read it. Um, but it's basically done. So Lacosta is basically done. Her story is basically done. But the thing is as we went along, she started to heal, and she was kind of in a limbo sort of space in a lot of ways where she so much was robbed of her power on planet that she had to fight for it so intensely that now as I was channeling her in, I would be like, hey, do you want to come to like the store with me? Or do you want to do this? She came and watched the Barbie movie with me this past weekend. Like, because I'm like, hey, let's watch some feminine power here. Like, will that help? So anyway, so there was kind of like a mutual healing connection that was coming between the two of us. And I was like, not it was kind of getting to the point where I was asking her advice for things and that kind of thing because she was so healed and like anyway. And that now that the book is like kind of rounding out, I'm like, I don't want you to go anywhere. Like this feels way beyond normal other characters I've channeled. I've channeled in tons of characters. I've written multiple books. And I'm like, this is not the same. And she was like, no, I don't think it's the same. And I was like, are you staying as a guide? Is this a contract we made? Like, what is this? And she's like, I think it is. And so then we did some like investigating on that. And so she is a guide of mine, but it's a guide that came from a mutual friendship standpoint first and evolved into a guiding relationship.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you for
I
sharing
love
because I was
her.
curious. I was
She's
like,
the best.
whoa, upgrade. What's going on?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. No, absolutely. It was fairly recent, I would say in the last, basically we went to Italy in March. And when we came back, I was like, oh yeah, you can't go anywhere. Don't go. Like where would you go? Like, oh no. And then it kind of was reaffirmed with the Greece trip that we went in May, that she was around and she wasn't going anywhere, and we kind of made that happy connection. So she's my guide. She's around. I would love to tell you how she felt about the Barbie movie. I am determined not to make any content about the Barbie movie until the strike is over. So, openly, honestly, would love to talk about it, would love to talk about the spirituality of it, would love to talk about the high vibeness of it and what Lacosta thought of it. But I want the strike to be done first. So I want to support the strikers. And when they start promoting the people in the Actors and Writers Guild, once they start promoting projects again, I will happily talk about what my think of movies. Honestly, I've been debating doing that honestly in Patreon of being like, watch a movie with me and my guides. And um, yeah, so I've been told mixed things. I do want to say with the Barbie movie stuff, someone says it's actually good to talk about even if we're on strike. Okay, that's good. If you want me to talk about it, like let me know. Shoot me like an email and tell me some stuff about it. I've had people say no and yes, so I don't really know there. So talking about a movie is totally okay. That's not being a scab. Cool. Well, anyway, I just want to make sure that I'm supporting the striking people because I deeply believe in it. Um, yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. So I'll tell you all once the strike is over. Support the people who are striking. Yeah.
Love that. Also, if for anybody who wants to support the strike of SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Union, their Instagram is like super, super helpful. They do put out like a list of shoulds and should not if you are to support the strike. So yeah, me too. I have a lot of friends who are on strike right now, so
Same. A lot of my clients are strikers. Like it's been like a big thing. So mostly I just every time I have talked about Barbie, I've basically been like, support the strike, Barbie movie,
Mhm.
support the strike though. Like this is what we're doing.
And
Yeah.
going to
So
see movies, from my understanding, they're still like go see them. Don't like cancel your subscriptions, like that kind of
no.
thing. But
Yeah. Monetarily still support the things they're trying to get past. Like that's what I've heard. But I'm not in SAG, so I don't even want to talk about it in that way. I just wanted to say I would love to share all of the feelings Lacosta had, of which she had many. I just am going to wait until the strike is over and the strikers have gotten what they deserve, and then I will gladly talk about
love
it. I'll
that.
make videos, I promise.
I'm looking forward because I saw the Barbie movie recently too, and I was just like, this is everything
I
that we
know,
need right
I
now.
know. Yeah, yeah, so, yeah. I support. I want to talk about it so badly because I cried the whole time, but it's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
Anyway,
okay.
and if you guys do want me to do like a watch a movie with me and my guides, like I don't know, TikToks or YouTubes or even like on Patreon or whatever, like I will gladly do that. If there's movies that you recommend that you're like I should see this with you, and I will like pause and narrate throughout, I will so do that. I will absolutely do that. So let me know on like videos and stuff or here or whatever. And I'll try to see if I can make that be a thing. I don't know. We're moving right now, so the logistics, I will have to like create a thing to like watch on the screen so then I can talk. I don't even know how it's gonna work, but we'll figure it out because I'd love to
Yeah,
do
we
like
talked about this at one point, didn't
movies.
we? Where
We
we were like,
did.
let's watch horror movies or,
Yeah.
and call things out. I was watching the first season of The Haunting on Netflix with Catherine, who I go online with a lot. And what was wild was we were watching it and we just like went back and forth of like, yeah, that happened in my house when I was growing up too. Oh, that
Hmm.
happened with you. Oh, yeah, toward your family. Oh, yeah, mine too. It was actually really validating because we're like, did it ever happen where somebody like was, hovering over you and you woke up to that one morning? Oh, yeah, it happened to me too. Okay, yeah, cool. So who was it for you? Oh, yeah,
Hmm.
that was that for me. Like,
See, exactly. Like yeah. And some of the movies that I'll have Lacosta watch, she fucking hates, even though I love them. Like I'll be like, "Hey, watch this with me," and she'll be like, "What did you just make me watch?" And I'm like, "I just made you watch a rom com. Isn't it fun?" And she's like, "No, what is this?" So, yeah, whether it's like Ghost, and we want to do maybe honestly, when I do come see you at some point, we will just do a collaborative movie sesh, um, at some point.
I love this. Also, from vibes
Mhm.
that I'm picking up from Lacosta, just from what you have said, I'm like, oh, her and Rupert are gonna have an interesting time sharing space together in a good way, I think. But I just feel like there's gonna be this moment of like,
Yeah. I will say she is like all of like not even 5 feet tall either. She's just this like tiny, she's so intense. And I'm like
right, me
really
too.
tall. I'm almost 6 foot. I'm like 5'10" and a half. Like I'm like a tall person. And then it's really funny. Anyway. So that's that.
Goodness. Well,
Oh,
cool. Things to do for the
right.
future.
Yeah. Things to do for the future. We got a lot of cool future stuff coming up. Also, if you've been following along my psychic guessing game, I'm announcing our next ancient wisdom retreat that Krista and I are hosting tomorrow. Um, so if you want to go back and watch all of those videos and get your pings in, I'm really excited about this location, and I'm so excited to announce it and invite you guys to come with me. It's gonna be really cool. So just gonna plug that in before we wrap up because I'm stoked.
Yes, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you and Crystal and both. I'm excited for all three of us for
Other things,
reasons.
reasons.
Keep following along. That's all I'm
Mhm.
gonna say. But really,
Yeah,
we have many things that are coming up, both separately and together, and it's gonna be a very exciting time. I,
yeah.
I I said this on the recent course as well, where I was just like, it is. it is a unique time where all of us can share time and space together and be here for reasons and affect one another and support one another. And it's not to disregard how hard it is sometimes
Hmm.
to be here right now, though.
Yeah,
Wow,
it
what a
is.
time to be alive.
That being said, because of the magic of technology, I will be posting this video on my YouTube. I know Rebecca's going to post this video on her YouTube, so that way we can, if you want to catch up on this, because a couple people just joined, and I'm like, if you want to watch it, you can watch everything through that we talked about. We talked aliens, y'all.
And what, Ivy, what did you call it? Vibration cake or something?
Yes, we talked about vibration cake and aliens. It's been an adventure. Yeah. Take care of yourselves this week, you guys. Rest, play, cry, do what you need to do. Full moon is next Tuesday. Of course, we'll update you on that more too. But yeah, thanks for going live with me. I'm sorry I gotta hop off.
Yeah, no, you're good. It's a little past the hour mark for me, so yeah. But yeah, thanks for going live with me. These are always a lot of fun, and you're getting all kinds of great comments. So thanks everybody
Oh,
for being here.
yeah, thank you so much for being here. So appreciate all of you. Sending all the love and magic your way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see you later. Okay,
See
bye.
ya.